Welcome to Dialogue with the Daughters Live. During this event, of course, you will be able to meet and discuss episodes with the women of the Daughter Dialogues Oral History Podcast Season 1. As you know, these women descend from men and women who contributed to the American Revolution, and they have proven their lineage through membership in the Daughters of the American Revolution. My name is Risha Rainey. I am the host of the Daughter Dialogues podcast. Season 2 begins in February, so we're not that far away. At the first Thursday of February, we will be releasing the first episode of Season 2 of Daughter Dialogues. New episodes, as you know, are released every Thursday, and visit daughterdialogues.com to subscribe to the newsletter and meet more members of color. Follow us. So we really want you to connect with us. Follow us at Daughter Dialogues on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And please keep in mind, this is not an official podcast or event of the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution. So this does not necessarily reflect the views or the opinions of the NSDAR. And I want you to keep in mind that this is not a typical webinar where you will hear the questions that I've already asked, right? And you won't hear me just asking more questions that I've thought of, because often in panel discussions, you listen to a bunch of questions that you don't necessarily care about, and we want to hear what you have on your mind tonight. And this is going to be a time for the participants here to drive the discussion. I don't have any pre-made up questions. I do have some that people did submit in advance with their registration. So I will be reading those first and then opening it up to people who want to ask questions live. Please remember, this is very important, that this is a non-political discussion. Tonight's common thread between the ladies that you will be meeting, or you've already heard their stories on the Daughter Dialogues podcast. The common thread is correcting family stories and setting the record straight. They've uncovered mistruths, and there's some cover-ups there. So but remember, you don't have to limit your discussion to just this common thread. It just serves as a less of a topic, but more of a way for the group to have a shared common experience. You can ask the daughters about family backgrounds or their lineage, motherhood, careers, or genealogy research. And I would like to now begin by introducing the daughters. They don't know that they were hidden for that part. So now we will open it up to everyone. Now that you can see, here are the daughters for this evening. I will start with introducing Adrienne Abiodun, in her episode called Part 1, Off the Grid Globetrotter, Enduring Loss, Overcoming Generational Shame. Adrienne discusses the need for greater suicide prevention support for military personnel after she endured losing her father, who served in the United States Armed Forces, to unaddressed mental trauma, and losing her hearing at 16 years old from a car accident. And she talks about how her off-the-grid exploration in Tajikistan's Wakhan Valley in the Pamir Mountains led to her interest in DNA testing for genealogy and a search for her heritage after having learned that her dad was not her biological father at 10 years old. Adrienne also talks about how she discovered that the Black man listed as the father on her grandfather's birth certificate was a lie, but instead was a white man named James Moffett from 1924 segregated Mississippi. Dell Jupiter. Welcome, Dell. I'm so excited that we got her on Zoom. She is 96 years old, and she is doing it by getting on and joining on
I'll be
this
97
technology.
in April.
There you go. Wow, Dell is almost 97, and she joined the DAR in 1991, which is much earlier than many of the ladies on the call. And so she was really a pioneer. And her episode was called Flushing Out Award-Winning Truths from Family Stories. Dell shared stories about having free reign of a millionaire's estate as a child in Pensacola, Florida,
It
and
was really fun, unusual.
and hunting for Spanish pirates' gold near the bayou, attending her beloved and my beloved Spelman College, dispelling family lore that a slave ancestor was born in Spain by instead tracing her roots back to 1770s Spanish Louisiana. And then Dell discovered her ancestor was Portuguese instead of Indian, according to family tradition, and she translated his Spanish records, proving that her German speaking Swiss American Revolutionary War patriot Anthony Kelker had a descendant that was not full blooded white, as argued by a relative, but instead was a Pennsylvania Dutch free man of color, was also in her story. And she received an award of excellence from the National Genealogical Society. Next, we have Stephani Miller, and her episode was titled Life Coach, Exposing Falsified and Denied Oral Histories. Stephanie talked about her Revolutionary War patriot, James Dew, and how he was not Scottish, but instead a Black man living with a white woman, and proving that her ancestor, Vilmont Shea Snader, was born to Norbert, a white man, who had a child with a slave, which Norbert's descendants denied. She discusses working as a pediatric home care nurse, opening a group adult residential home with her mother and family, and running a supported living coaches, personal supports, and life skills business. Alison Morrison, she joined in 2002. Scientist knitter, researching and keeping family secrets was the title of her episode. Allison talks about her background as a scientist and how she knits patterns with binary numbers. And she tells how her Revolutionary War patriot was a slave owner and recounts her attempts to reach out to her white relatives who descended from the man who once owned her family members. And she shares that she has kept her membership in the Daughters of the American Revolution a secret from her family for 18 years. Of course, until now. I mean, they know now. Nikki Williams Sebastian, her episode was Uncovering and Telling Unknown Stories. It's complicated. Nikki shares the story of using DNA testing to prove descent from American Revolutionary War patriot Edward Barrett through ancestor Ellen, who was enslaved on the O'Kelly plantation in Mississippi and Louisiana and bore children for her slave owner. She talked about discovering the origin of the O'Kelly name is not Irish, as celebrated by white descendants. And she talks about what happened after the O'Kellys discovered that their family origin is not Irish, but instead British, and the O'Kelly lineage connection to Revolutionary War ancestor Edward Barrett. Welcome, ladies. Welcome to all of you. And again, the last reminder to the attendees. So some may have just joined a little later. Hey, Joyce Mosley is on. She's one of the panelists from the prior weeks as well. And Joy Edwards Haynes, welcome. So I want to explain that, and again, you can use the chat feature to connect with each other and the other attendees on the call. Send a shout out to anyone that you might know, or just say hi to each other, and someone might reply to you, or talk about what the subject matter amongst yourselves. And use the Q&A. The Q&A is where I will be checking for questions. I won't be monitoring the chat, and the panelists won't be monitoring the chat. I will be monitoring the Q&A in order to uh, to pose your questions live to the attendees. And there's a cool feature, you can upvote. So if you as an attendee see a question in the Q&A that you want to see answered too, you can click on beside the question will be a little thumbs up icon. So that would mean that you like the question, and that will, the more people who like it will show up higher on my list of Q&A. So it'll get priority over the other questions. So the first question that we have is from an attendee that submitted it in advance. And this is a question for all of the panelists. Tracing genealogy for African American women is difficult. It typically requires developing the advanced levels of genealogy expertise or paying money to a professional that has the expertise. I am a white member of the DAR, and whenever I've sought to recruit a friend that's African American, we've hit a dead end, and that is beyond my limited abilities. It leaves me feeling like I've led them on, and I suspect that they may have come away from the experience with a new sense of rejection. So I've decided not to attempt to do that anymore. What advice would you give to white DAR members facing this same dynamic? And I'm going to start with Nikki.
Well, thank you, Risha. Excellent question. And the simple answer that I will start with to kind of get us on this path is people need to understand that there is not an African American genealogy. It's American genealogy. And African Americans have lived in the same places, lived in the same towns, and oftentimes, as we've all discussed, we have very diverse backgrounds. There are, of course, as we know here, African Americans that have European ancestors. There are Europeans today who have African ancestors. So the mindset that we all need to be in when you're helping someone, an African American, we have to get out of this mindset that, oh, this is Black research. This research is going to be different. It's not going to be different. It's the same research that you would do for yourself, because we go to the same courthouse. We go to the same county archives or whatever it is, manuscript, family records, whatever it is. But we have to have this understanding that there is not a separate type of Black research, but with the understanding that we do have to deal with slavery. And that is a factor in doing research. But if we have the thought process that it's a different type of research, that's pretty much the number one stumbling block, I believe.
Thank you. Adrienne Abiodun, you want to take a stab at that?
Well, I agree with Nikki, and I think also when you're inviting someone, I would just set the expectation. I would love for you to join. But as with anybody's genealogy, there might be brick walls, and it may take some time to overcome those brick walls. So, I think if you set the expectation there, they shouldn't come away feeling rejected, but just that maybe they need a little more patience, or they need to look at a different line in their family tree. The same way any other DAR member or PM would approach membership. So that's my advice. And ultimately, I also think that they have to want it more than you do. You've invited them, but they have to want to do the work. It's not your responsibility to do all the work for them, even if you are the one wanting them there. So.
Okay, thank you, Allyson.
All right, this is sort of a pet project of mine. What I have found with anyone, but particularly with a person of color, is my approach would be to find out if they're interested in genealogy, and then let's look at your background, let's see what we find, and then go from there. If it looks promising, then I would say, look, this looks like it might go back as far as the American Revolution. Let's see what we find there. You might also find something that would be useful in proving the lineage for a different society. And I would suggest that. That way the person sees the positive of what they can document, because in many cases, for people of color, if their ancestors were here before the Civil War, they were probably here at the time of the Revolution, but that does not mean that you can document it. And that could be true for anyone, but I would be more open-ended rather than looking specifically for the DAR.
Thank you. Stephani?
Yes, as Nikki and the rest of the ladies were saying, they're correct. But you still can find pension records for the soldiers. You can go back to census. And you can also go by the census. You also can go to the slaveholders who might use their slaves as being a substitute in the day in the war. So there's a lot of avenues that you can use to find African American soldiers.
Dell, do you have anything?
Well, what I did, I sort of mined all the resources of a particular area, and I did my research like localities. If this person was born in New Orleans, well, I'm going to find out what resources are available there other than the well-known ones, but those known resources that you can find things in. And New Orleans is notable for their notarial archives and the Family Search Library. They have filmed all of those. So that was what I did at a suggestion of a researcher. I got all the microfilm. I copied all the microfilm records of some particular years, and I copied the indexes and put them in a notebook that I could sit in my living room and take my time and go through my indexes and look for the names I was looking for. So that was very useful for me.
So do you think that white members should still try to help Black members to join, even though they might hit a brick wall? Do you think they still should try, or do
I
you think
think
they're
they
leading
should
them
try to
down?
help if they're interested in doing it.
Okay.
But see, when I joined the DAR, I didn't know any white members of the Daughters of the American Revolution. I sort of did all this on my own. One thing that helped me, I went to a genealogical society, the State Genealogical Society conference one year, and they were talking about Florida resources. You have to know the resources of your state and what's available locally and all of that.
Thank you, Dell. All right. So now I want to launch a poll to see who's on the call with us. So you on the screen, you will see a poll that says, are you a DAR member or are you a member of the DAR? And of course, there's two choices, yes or no. And so if you could select the answer, and I will tell you when everyone has voted or a good majority has voted. And we'd like to just know, what is our audience that we're talking to? And over the past 3 sessions, I should say 2 sessions, because this is the third, over the past 2 live events, it was a nearly 50-50 split. So it's very interesting because I'm seeing the results coming in now. We're at 82%. The results that I'm seeing tonight are very different. Okay, so I'm going to end the polling and I will share the results. So we have 77% are DAR members and 23% are not. So our DAR listeners are loyal, and welcome to those of you who are not DAR members. We want to make sure that we are talking to everyone that's interested in hearing the stories. I think it's important for everyone to hear what stories that these women of color have to tell about their history and about their personal stories. I have a second poll to launch. I have launched it now. Again, we want to know who's on the call with us. So the questions are, how are you affiliated with Dialogue with the Daughters? Do you personally know a panelist? So it's just like your friend is up here. And so you're coming to support them, and you can pick more than one. So just pick however many apply to you. You can pick as many as you like. I don't think all of them can apply to one person. Are you familiar with a panelist? Maybe they're in a genealogy group of yours. You don't really know them. You've just kind of seen them in a Facebook group or something. Are you a DAR member of color? I know this is redundant. Are you a DAR member? So that's another one to answer again. Are you working on joining the DAR? Or are you not affiliated at all? You just simply enjoy daughter dialogues, which is totally an acceptable answer. I love that one, because that means that this is all new information to you and you're coming to hear the ladies' stories. It doesn't even matter. This is not for people that are just a member or trying to join. This is for everyone to know. And as Nikki has said, to enrich tell a more honest truth about the American history and update the American narrative. So that's what we're trying to do with this study. All right, 87% have answered, so I will display the results. Look at that. So we have a few people on that are not affiliated with Daughter Dialogues, which is great. Welcome. And of course, we have people that know some of the panelists that are up here. So welcome, everybody. All right. So now we have some what I call rapid fire questions. These are always submitted by our super fan, Ann Davis. I love it. Ann comes through every week with these. So let's start with Adrienne. Adrienne Abiodun is a beautiful name. Okay, wait, let me back up. Rapid fire, because there's a lot of questions per person. So rapid fire means I need a quick answer, like a 10-second answer. We got to go on to the next questions. All right. So Abiodun, your last name is a beautiful name. What is its origin?
The origin of Abiodun is a Yoruba, West African last name through marriage, and it means born at a festive time.
Okay, and I believe you said Yoruba. Is that what you said?
Yes, Yoruba.
Okay. All right. What one piece of advice would you give to anyone using DNA to identify their ancestry besides expect surprises?
Test as many people as possible.
Okay. As a daughter in an Air Force family, you have lived in many places. Which location evokes the strongest memories? Why? What are those memories?
I'm going to say Pacoima, California, which actually had nothing to do with my military background. I was living with my grandmother at the time, so it was the one time that I got to spend with family, like my aunts and uncles. And then after that, my family took off and we were military brat life again. So
perfect. Your parents came from very different locales, Mississippi and Hollywood, California. How did that affect their attitudes and values, or did it?
I will say my mom's parents are from Mississippi. So I think when my mom went out there and joined the Air Force, she unintentionally dated men from Mississippi because that was something she was used to. It was kind of the flavor of her household, I guess, just what was familiar. So both my biological father and my stepfather were both from Mississippi. So.
Okay. You are a millennial. Do you think that factored into your ability to deal with the surprises you found in your family history? How?
Not really. I do other generations have problems? Are they more surprised than millennials? I guess that would be my question and a question answer. But no, my mother told me a lot of the family secrets, minus my own, and so I think I don't know, I'm just kind of used to it.
Okay. You have traveled extensively. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would that be and why?
I just live where there's love, peace, harmony, unity, diversity. I mean, that's it for me.
You have to answer the question. Anywhere in the world, where would that be? Pick one.
I've been to many. I don't have one place.
Okay.
If my mom is there, I'm a happy camper.
It's not happening. Not acceptable. You were supposed to pick one. All right. You have a degree in video production. How can you use your training and talent to promote the missions of the DAR?
I'm currently not using my background, my video production background right now at all. So
the question is, how can you though?
How could I could help with social media stuff now. That's what everybody's using. I mean, we're all on Zoom and Instagram and so TikTok.
All right. You are, for the most part, a stay-at-home mom. That's a significant, rewarding, and worthwhile profession. Do you think you will ever return full-time to the outside workforce? What would be your dream job?
I actually am working, and I think at the beginning of the Daughter Dialogues podcast I had started, but I'm working part-time as a professional genealogist with legacy tree genealogist on the DNA team. So, and that is a dream job.
Okay, Del, your turn. Wake up, Del. I caught you napping. All right. You are one of the greatest generation and have lived through many changes. If you could go back for a visit to any one time and place in your life, what would it be and why? And Del, we have to keep these to like 10-second answers.
Well, I think I would go back to when I was growing up, lived across the street from my grandparents and my maternal grandparents. We were always back and forth between their yard and our yard, and they my grandfather had a horse named Charlie Boy, and that was fun because one time the horse ran away and Daddy Palmer's chased him across the street for the baseball. So you say, "Whoa, Charlie Boy!" And he had a stable in the backyard, and he had to feed the horse and all of that.
And was that Pensacola?
It was in Pensacola.
Okay. You have 3 children and 6 grandchildren. Any great grandchildren, and how many?
I have, I think, 3 great grandchildren.
Okay. You have an impressive resume of published articles. How does one go about submitting an article for publication? Are
Well,
you asked to write on specific topic, or do you submit a finished article to a
I
likely
submitted a
periodical?
finished article and I started my research. I used to go to the Georgia State Archives and read the National Geological Society quite all the time. And I decided that when I finished my research, I wanted the nation's genealogists to read my work and be recognized by them. So that was my goal. And when I decided, I got ready, I submitted an article. The National Geological Society has a family history writing contest every year. And I submitted that, to that. I was a runner up twice. I never did win the first prize, but I was a runner up. And
Is
it
there
was published.
is there one family story that you have yet to write or tell?
No, I think I've about done everything I could do.
Okay, perfect. In 1992, you were the runner-up, as you mentioned, in the National Genealogical Society's Family History Writing Contest. Is the contest still held, and how does one enter?
Well, I'm sure it's still held. I'm not really an active member anymore, but they announced it when you should submit your interest and all of that. And it's easy enough to do.
Okay.
And you have to follow certain guidelines and write up a family history about, how you list the generations. And I had seen how that was done. And I don't know whether any of you are familiar how you list your generations on a family history. I don't know, you're familiar with that?
I'm not the researcher, so you'd have to ask the other ladies on the call.
You know how you use Roman numerals and you use the small numerals for second and third generation, but I think that first generation is always a capitalized Roman numeral.
Okay, your ancestor in 1770, Spanish Louisiana, was Portuguese. Did you track him back to his family in Portugal?
No, he wasn't from Spanish Louisiana. Well, he was from Spanish Pensacola. He was a sailor at one time. He was also listed as a shopkeeper, but I've never traced him back because Juan and Gomez are common names. So I don't know what happened to him. The family story is he dropped dead in front of the Catholic cemetery before he freed his 2 daughters, which wasn't true, he only freed one. They planned to free their mother, but he dropped dead before he could do it.
How did you go about translating your Portuguese ancestors' Spanish records? Did he leave any written in Portuguese?
Yeah, what happened in the deed book, I found a deed in Spanish or whatever, and I was visiting my son. He had a Hispanic friend. I asked her to translate it for me.
Were they all Spanish or were some in Portuguese?
Well, I don't know the difference between Spanish and Portuguese. Whatever it wasn't English.
Okay. Perfect. All right, Stephani Miller, your ancestor Vilmont was a soldier in the U.S. colored troops during the Civil War. Would you be eligible to join both the National Society Daughters of the Union and or the Daughters of Union Veterans of the Civil War? What do you know about these organizations? Why did you choose the DAR instead of one of these?
Yes, I am eligible. In fact, I am a member of the National Society of Daughters of the Union. I belong to the Amos P. Carr chapter. And then the qualifications is almost the same as DAR, be a woman of 18 and above. But the difference is with them is you can join by collateral lineage, meaning that you can join if you have an uncle, whereas DR is strictly patriarch lineage.
Okay. You were a member of the National Spanish Honor Society. Do you use your Spanish today?
Unfortunately, no, I do not.
Okay. You have a special interest in non-paternity events and adoption cases. What advice would you give to a prospective member who hits an adoption brick wall?
I believe in DNA testing. That has been very helpful in my researching. And then when you have your DNA testing, Facebook has a lot of groups that will have free volunteers that will assist you finding your lineage.
You enjoy travel and family. What was the funniest thing that ever happened when you traveled with your children?
I couldn't think of the funniest, but the most memorable occasion was when me and my children went on a cruise, and we were at the captain's dinner. And the captain was dancing, and he asked everybody who wanted to join him on the stage with 3,000 people who would like to come join him. Well, my 8-year-old son said he wanted to go dance, so he grabbed me by the hand and was walking towards the stage, and I couldn't refuse him. So I was dancing in front of everybody on the stage.
And then your ancestor, James Dew, who is a patriot of color, is buried with no grave marker in Tuckahoe State Park. That's in Maryland. And as most know, that I am in Maryland. Have you explored the possibility of having a DAR marker placed in the park in his honor? Would your chapter or a local chapter take this on as an historic preservation project?
Yes, I'm very interested in getting a marker. I'm waiting for my cousins, Brenda Harris and Terry Brown, to join DAR so they can use their local chapter and we do it together.
Are they in Maryland?
Yes, they are.
Oh,
Maryland.
okay.
Well, they're actually in Philadelphia, but they might join Maryland also, be associate of the Maryland chapter.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Allison, you're up. Allison, I did mute you, so you'll have to unmute, please. How did you develop an interest in fiber arts? Did someone in your family knit, weave, or crochet, tat, or spin? What is your favorite yarn weight and favorite project?
That's a lot.
I know it's a lot. 10 seconds, Allison.
Interested in fiber arts around the age of 4. And I think that year someone put out a knitting machine for children, and I got one for Christmas. And I never looked back. I had my mother teach me how to knit. She taught me the basics when I was around age 4 or 5, but I didn't get serious until I was a little older, middle school or high school. And I've just been fascinated all my life.
What is your favorite yarn weight?
My favorite yarn weight right now is fingering weight, which is a little bit on the lighter side. It's something that is narrower than the yarn that you usually see in a discount store. That's called worsted.
What was your favorite project? Was it knitting that playlist? Binary numbers? Like, what was your favorite project?
Binary project was not my favorite. I think my all-time favorite project was knitting the periodic chart of elements.
Wow. Okay. You have created knitting patterns with binary numbers. Have you published a knitting pattern, and where can I find one?
I have not published a knitting pattern with binary numbers. The way to do that would be you can go on the internet and there are binary converters. You can type in a message and it will convert it to binary for you. You can also get charts. I believe they're ASCII charts, ASCII, and you can convert it yourself, which is what I did.
Okay. You once worked in an infectious disease lab. What are your thoughts about the current pandemic?
I actually worked with viruses, and my thought for day-to-day working is that people do need to wear masks, because a virus, if you think about it, a cold virus and the COVID virus are roughly in the same grouping. They are similar. And if you think about how easily a cold can be passed from one person to another, that is a way to consider how easy it is to pass COVID from one person to another. And with a mask does not absolutely stop transmission of the virus, but it slows it down. What public health measures such as mask wearing, sanitizing your hands, and staying at home are meant to do is to slow down the transmission of the virus so that it can be isolated. And if people are not passing it from one to another, people who are infected can recover. And if the virus doesn't pass to anybody else, that's where the infection ends.
Perfect. Your final job was as a reference assistant in a private environmental engineering lab. What is environmental engineering? What goes on in an environmental engineering lab?
Okay. The lab or the firm that I worked for primarily did water remediation. If you think about it, in every city and in every town, when you go to the kitchen and turn on the tap, you get clean water that comes out into your house, and it's safe to drink, and you can cook with it, you can bathe with it. When it leaves your house, that water is contaminated with, say, soap suds, or it's been in your kitchen, you've boiled something in it, and you're pouring dirty water down the sink. Somebody has to clean up that water so that it's safe to drink again. Environmental engineers are the ones who clean up your water.
Thank you. You have kept your membership in the DAR a secret for 18 years. The secret's out. Have you become active in your DAR chapter or encouraged other family members to join?
Well, I've always been somewhat active in my chapter. With my family members, when I talk to them, what I say to them is, by the way, I joined the DAR, and if you are interested, you're eligible to join it too. And they usually say something like, oh, how interesting. And that's where it ends. I am careful to only say that to the family members that I know are eligible, because other family members who say are on the other side of my family are not necessarily eligible as far as I know, or I don't think we can prove it yet.
Okay.
So I take each case individually.
Thank you. Next is Nikki. Nikki, what school did you go to? It is a very St. Louis question. You grew up in North St. Louis County and attended Normandy High School. Before you ask, McClure class of 68, members from 4 generations of my family were teachers and or students in Ferguson Florissant school district schools. Your mother was an elementary school counselor in the Ferguson, what is it called? Florissant School District. Which school? When?
My mother was a counselor at Cool Valley Elementary School in the Ferguson Florissant School District, Miss Williams.
Okay. Do you still have family in your old North County neighborhood? Do you visit? How would you describe the changes you've seen in the neighborhood?
Well, of course, I still go home all the time to visit my family. But question number one, I did not go to Normandy High School. I have cousins who went to Normandy High School. I went to Rosati Kane High School. So I have to answer the St. Louis question. But yeah, I still, my family is from St. Louis. My mother and my father were both born in St. Louis, and most of my genealogy goes through St. Louis, but I am the odd child out. I am in Georgia, so.
Where's your favorite location to scuba dive?
Favorite location to scuba dive is wherever there's clear water and lots of fish.
You're reminding me of Adrienne. Go ahead.
I knew you were going to say that,
Okay.
but I like the Caribbean. The Caribbean is always nice and peaceful.
Okay, thank you. The Mormon religion has a history of being biased against people of color, yet a member of your self-described Black family converted to Mormonism. Has the Mormon church been welcoming to him or her?
Well, of course. She wouldn't have been a member if they weren't welcoming. But, and you know, you can't single out the Mormons. Baptists, Catholics, they all have their issues, historical issues. So we won't single the Mormons out. But where any activity where I was always welcome. It was always a wonderful experience.
Okay. You have accepted leadership roles in the DAR. What was the most significant role you have played and why?
The most significant, I'm not sure what she means by significant, or most educational, or most helpful, or
maybe what was the most highest ranking position you may have had in the DAR?
Well, you can have chapter roles, you can have state roles, you can
Right.
have
So
national
you have to
roles.
pick one.
Well,
What
I'm
was the most
explaining to the
significant?
viewers the
Okay.
different levels of roles. But as far I have a chapter role, I had a state role helping in the service for veterans. So I would say that is one of the more significant ones because there's always so much to do.
Okay. You are a Gen Xer. How can the DAR attract and keep more young women your age?
I think for for people to see us, to see it's not just a certain type of ladies, and so my friends like to tease me and say ladies with blue hair, and that's her joke. She said, "You know who you are, my friend. You know who you are." And it's not ladies with blue hair. I don't have blue hair, but as long as people can see us and see us out, and it's all about being visible. So we do what we can to make ourselves visible, and that's why we're doing this.
Okay. Last one. What kind of gardening do you do? Flower, vegetable, or both?
I do. The garden that I made, I created for myself was a vegetable garden, but I do plant flowers in front of my house. But I had a vegetable garden.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, ladies, for our rapid fire questions and for
You're
Superfan.
rushing me.
I'm sorry, everybody got rushed. Thank you to Superfan and Tavis. I think we made it just before she was able to stay on. So thank you, Anne, for that.
Thank you.
Q&A. Now we're going to the live questions. So there's one that's been upvoted and 4 likes on this. This is for the panelists. How have your friends and family reacted to you sharing your family stories in such a public way, especially since you are shining the light on family stories that you discovered were not true? So how do they feel about you doing this daughter dialogue, telling the world, like, hey, I found out this information was wrong, that there were cover ups and lies in our family history? Does anybody want to take that answer? More than one person can answer, but who wants to take that first? Allyson.
All right. Most of my family, meaning the younger members, have been fine because they are not scandalized by things that perhaps pre-civil rights might have been upsetting, like finding out that the family's biracial. The very oldest members of my family that are still alive, I tend not to discuss it with them. I've told everyone I'm a DAR member, but I just don't push it because I know there is one relative who still really, really is opposed to any sort of genealogy.
Okay. Dell, how did people react in your family when you told them that the things that they thought were true were not?
Well, I know one fella told me when we were discussing this ancestor who's a free man of color, he said, well, my grandfather told me that his father was a pure-blooded white man. So I say, well, you just go find your pure-blooded white man, then that's all right with me. But that he was the only one that I say that didn't think what I had done was correct. That discovered that the free man, they was a free man in colors. Well, the family story always said it was white. Mother's story, when I asked mother to write our story down, she said he was a white Dutch Baptist preacher. So when I heard the word Dutch, I thought I had to go to Holland to find him out. But Dutch meant Pennsylvania Dutch. His father was Pennsylvania Dutch, and they came over to America in 1743. The Calcas did.
And what about the ancestor that they thought was born in Spain, but instead you found him in Spanish Louisiana? Was anybody disappointed? Like, oh, we thought our ancestor was Spanish.
No, my mother was dead at the time I found all that. And the other people in the family, they were excited about it.
Okay. And anything else to add? She has been having technical issues, so we can't see her right now. But I wanted to know how their family felt. Anybody else want to add to that? How about you, Stephani, when you told them, hey, James Dew is Black?
My family was excited about that. I'm still interested in contacting my white cousins, and I'm hoping that by the time I put the marker, that we'll do it as an entire family, the white side and the Black side together.
Okay, Adrienne's here for a second. Do you want to chime in? You'll have to unmute yourself.
My family loves it. And my friends, when I post stories on Facebook and I share it, I mean, my family's used to it, and we're small groups, so there's nothing really surprising anymore. But for other people, I think that I always get inbox messages where they're like, I'm really, I'm really inspired by your stories, and
But
so I feel like it makes them
specifically,
want to.
when you found out that the man on your grandfather's birth certificate was a lie, like a straight up mistruth, and you said that it's not this black man that they put on the birth certificate, but it was a white man named James Moffett from Mississippi. How did people feel and your family feel when you revealed that?
Well, again, there was a photo. My grandfather had always had a photo of a white man, and he was visibly biracial. I mean, he could have passed and gone over and pretended to be white and never had married a black woman or anything like that. So I don't think they were super shocked by that. I mean, um, they weren't, but just to finally figure out what his name was, because again, they were in California and everybody in Mississippi knew all of this. It was just us that did not know.
Mhm.
So I think they were just kind of at peace with the information I found.
Okay. The next question is, if you find mistakes in the vital records, do you recommend submitting official corrections to the record or just leave well enough alone? Adrienne, why don't you start with that while we have you through technical? Your tech is working right now.
I'm sorry. I did. I mean, where and when possible, why not? I think that will help moving forward. If someone's looking backward and they see those corrections, I think it helps to ask questions. Well, what is this, and why was this correction made? So I did that with my grandfather's death certificate while I had my aunts still here. One of them passed, but they were the two informants on that death certificate, and the state of California preferred that those informants make the corrections. Well, so they did.
Thank you, Del. What do you recommend?
Well, I had my son's birth certificate corrected because he spelled his first name wrong. Because I was here in Georgia, and it's easy enough to do. I just went down to the Department of Public Health and told them about it, and they took my word for it and corrected it.
Okay. Anyone else want to comment on that? Okay. Oh, Nikki, go ahead.
I just add on my father's birth certificate. It wasn't changed or anything like that, but my grandmother did not want then his name that what they decided when he was born to have. So she instead changed his name on his christening record, his baptismal record, and that is a document of proof for a name, and that was the name that my father had. So when I was joining DAR, his birth certificate did not match his death certificate, the names, but I had the transition because the birth certificate had my father's parents on there, the same as the birth certificate. So it was easily explainable, but that was just an example of birth and death not matching. But I'm not going to change anything with that.
Thank you. Allyson, someone has asked, oh, wow, will you share a photo of your table of elements in yarn? That's so cool. Is there a way that you can give me a photo and I will send it out in the newsletter? Because everyone on this event is a Daughter Dialogues subscriber, and subscribers will receive a photo of your.
Absolutely. I can give you a photo. And if you would give me a moment, I can actually switch my background to a photo of the knitting right now.
Is it the elements in yarn? Is it the yarn that you did?
It is the periodic table that I knit.
Okay, well, why don't you work on that while I go to the next person, and we will see. This will be fun.
Okay.
Thank you for that question. All right, careful with changing your background. You're live. You're hot, so your camera's hot. Okay. Next question. What are you all most excited about in the future of DAR? I'll start with Nikki because Nikki has been very engaged in the society.
Excited about the future. The The future of DAR. Well, I love our today's DAR segments, and then that's a hashtag that we use in DAR, and it highlights all the different types of women pilots and what are the jobs? It's all kinds of jobs that people have. Judges. There's all kinds of jobs, all kinds of things that we do. Veterans, generals, all types of high-ranking veterans or active duty personnel, and that's always exciting to see that. But I'm happy DAR. Over this past summer, I was happy to see that our President General put out a statement, just affirming this support of different. What's the phrase I want to use? Civil rights.
Oh,
Yeah, the whatever our President General statement she put out this summer was very. I was very happy to see that, and that makes me excited about the future of DAR. To go back to the question about for us to be visible, and a lot of us are being visible, and I'm happy about the future because there's so many different types of women joining DAR now, and even this year, even last year. And it's unfortunate we don't have a number, because I know you mentioned that the application, there's no place to state your race or ethnicity on there. That's unfortunate, but we see new people every day. Just every time we come together as an organization, and we always see our numbers growing. So it's always exciting. That's makes me happy.
Anyone else want to add to that?
I'll add to it.
Okay.
As a member of the DAR DNA network, I'm really excited about the use of autosomal DNA for new member applications and potentially proving new patriots or getting all those supplementals daughters like to get. So hopefully daughters will become more educated and continue to just continuing education with DNA and learning how to use that to prove new patriots. So I think that's exciting in the future, and that allowing more members to get through that way, where there were doors that may have been closed just because the records didn't match. Now we have this additional tool.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. What tips do you have for starting dialogue and sharing research with extended family members of a white patriot? What tips do you have for starting dialogue and sharing research with extended family members of a white patriot?
I can answer
Okay,
that.
Nikki.
Unless
Yes.
someone else wants to go first.
Go for it.
Well, in my particular case, we in my family, my cousin and I received some pushback from some Black family. I meant my Black family, my closest family, and because it is a very painful story, and we received criticism or whatever the word you want to use for. But well, why are we talking about this? Why? And you talk about that in the podcast. People's family members pushing back about that. But we want to get to the truth. We're trying to trace our family history, and that's the whole purpose of doing this. And when I had pushback from family, or just being a Black family, and having at least one of our line documenting the history of that line, and that our family descends from a white male progenitor, that's a sticky topic for some Black families, Black family members. And you have to explain to people that family history without genealogy, without evidence, without documentation is mythology. And that's the answer that I give back to my family. And I explain to my family, this is the fact, this is what it is, this is factual, it's not mythology. So family history without documentation is mythology. So just share that. You have to tell that to our family members. But for the most part, the family gets it. We get it, we understand, and we're moving forward, and gathering research, and what we're trying to do, we're becoming incorporated in my family history, and we're gathering this information and we're passing it down to the next generation in a formal process. So, but that would be my solution, is just to be honest with your family and just be transparent and clear about what the goals are and why we're doing what we're doing, and hopefully get everybody on board.
Does anybody else have any more tips for sharing research with your extended family members of a white patriot? So if you have other white family members that descend from a common white ancestor who's a patriot, how would you approach that? Do you have anything else to add? Del, do you have anything?
Well, I remember when I first heard about a Kelka family, white. She had been to a conference here in Atlanta, was bored, and I was in the Atlanta Family History group, which was black, and they had a newsletter, and she looked over and sitting next to this black fellow who was at the member meeting, and she decided to start reading this magazine, and there was a write-up about me and my research, and that's how she got in touch with me. But they were all very nice, and all those I have contacted, even those who are descendants of former slave owners, we're not kin. I've been in touch with those family members also. And we met at a public library in a small town in Alabama and had a nice meeting. Then we went to the sites that had to do with each of our families that lived further out in the country on the plantation. So that was interesting.
Thank you. Next question is how, oh, well, before we go to the next question, Allyson pulled it off. Look at this behind, what do you have behind you, Allyson? What is that background?
It is a portion of the periodic table of elements that I knit. The entire piece is an afghan. It would be like a lap robe. And what you can see behind you, what I can see is the K is potassium. And next to it, I believe, would be calcium. And below that, I believe, is ytterbium or yttrium.
Thank you. That's impressive, Allyson. Thank you for that. All right. So our next question is, how can I encourage African American women to join the DAR? Who wants to take that? Somebody has to take the question.
I met a person at the National Archives. She was doing research. We were sitting next to each other, and I found out that she had a Revolutionary War ancestor, and I encouraged her to finish her research and join the DAR, But I haven't been in touch with her anymore, but it's that one time I saw her and suggest she do that.
Any more contributions to this?
I have a friend who's in the Washington Daughters Dialogue, and they're now interested in trying to find their own patriot now.
Thank you, Stephanie, for the plug. So that's what I'm hoping that this research will do, is encourage all women to join the DAR, not just African American women, because I've met many white women that were hesitant about joining the DAR because they feel like it has an associated negative stereotype from its past history of discrimination, and they didn't want to be associated with that. So this research may help both Black and white prospective members want to join the DAR because now they see it as more of a diverse society, an inclusive society that welcomes all. And I think that makes it more attractive to everyone. Does anybody else have something else to add?
Yes, I do. I actually got back in touch with someone that I had known since the 3rd grade. And she is of African American and Native American heritage. And she found out I was interested in genealogy. I told her that I was a member of the DAR, and she joined. She was able to get her documentation together, and she's a member of a chapter in Baltimore. She joined, I think she was accepted, shall we say, just this past autumn.
Thank you.
And for other people, I think if you seem enthusiastic about it, they'll get interested.
Adrienne, I know you've been trying to get in there. Go ahead.
Well, I was just to Allison's last point. I was going to say lead by example. Just I'm not the type of person that usually reaches out to people to join things that I might be doing. I tend to just do my thing and then let others approach me like, hey, that looks like fun. How do I do that? Because I'm a firm believer in people coming and being interested themselves, but by my example. So if I'm having fun, if I'm volunteering, if I'm of service to my community, I think that's efficient too.
One thing I want to say, Risha, and I think Joy Haynes had to drop off, but Joy is from St. Louis County with me, and we grew up around the corner from each other. We went to the same Catholic school, elementary school, with each other, Ascension in Normandy, and we're both in DAR. And we didn't know that. Of course, when we were 9 and she was 12, whatever our age, and we didn't know anything about DAR, had nothing about that. But then I just joined, and then she joined later, and we found each other on Facebook. But two Black girls from St. Louis County ended up in this, not where she's in a different state, but it ended up in this This is how far reaching this organization is. And you don't know until you know. You get in contact with people that you don't assume you would become in contact with when you join DAR. What you get in contact with are people who have traced their family. And that can be all kinds of people. You get in contact with people who love family history. And that could be your friend who you grew up with and you didn't know that. But then DAR brought us back together again from friends from back in the day. Back in the day, St. Louis.
Perfect.
I found a friend. So
here's our next question. Has anyone had the occasion of a white DAR applicant using your Patriot data or connection to support their membership qualification? Just curious. So has anyone used your work that you've done to apply and have your Patriot lineage documented to join, and they were a white prospective member?
I mean, after we joined.
Yes. Did anyone use your papers or Patriot, like I said, what you've proven as far as the lineage to the Patriot? Has anyone joined through your documentation that was white?
Family? Oh,
yes,
okay.
Yes, that was white. I would assume other than your family, because your family will probably say, "Hey, come on in under me." But has anyone else had that experience?
I have not, but I'm waiting for that to happen because I actually found my Patriot through my white DNA cousin who thought the Patriot was actually white. So they were assuming that their great-grandfather was white, like the white Patriot, until I went and found deeper and found that he was actually African American. So I'm waiting for them to join me to celebrate our Patriot.
Right. When what was interesting in Adrienne's story, not exactly what this question is, but how Adrienne found out that you shared the same Patriot as the Connecticut state regent, meaning the state leader, the leader of the state of Connecticut, shared the same Patriot as you, and she invited you to speak as a keynote speaker to the entire state membership of Connecticut at the state conference, and even explained that you all were related through your ancestor, which I think is pretty remarkable that she would be willing and proud to have you reveal that information, that the two of you were related through the same Patriot ancestor.
Yeah, I was going to say she ended up joining after me. So our Patriot only had one other DAR member under the Patriot ancestor, and her name was Alice, and she joined, I want to say like early on, and then no one else joined until I came along. And then the state region of Connecticut, not the current one, but the previous one, she's my cousin, and she joined, or she didn't join, but she submitted a supplemental for the Patriot
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
This question, I'm not sure what it is. I feel bad I missed your genealogy class this morning. Where are they normally posted, and can I sign up in advance? Thank you. I don't know if that was meant for me or if that was a chat that kind of came over to the Q&A by accident. But what did happen this morning, I was interviewed live by Bernice Bennett, who has a podcast, Research at the National Archives and Beyond. And I did send out the message just before we went live.
I was there.
Thank you. You attended it, Nikki. So I had some support on there. And the good thing is that there is a recording available, and you can hear Bernice. She asked me more about the specifics of this daughter dialogues research and like, how am I doing it? And how do I recruit the women to participate in the study? And how many questions do I ask them? And so it was pretty cool that she asked more about the very specific dynamics of how the behind the scenes of how this is all done. So if you're interested in hearing the behind the scenes, definitely check that out, and I will be sending out a link to it to all the subscribers in the next email newsletter, as well as posting it on social media.
Great, Shelley. I saw Shelley's comment. She says they're working on getting Bernice and DAR. That would be
Oh, that would
great.
be
That would
absolutely
be
great.
awesome. I hope so. Let me know if I can help.
And we have a comment. Thank you for sharing the table of elements. That goes to Allyson. Last question that I see here. If you have another question, this is your last chance, people on the attendees. If you want to ask a question, get it in now into the Q&A. Since you have all proved your lineage back to a patriot of the American Revolution, what is your next genealogy goal? Since you've already done this, you've checked off the box, you have an American Revolutionary War patriot, what is your next goal for your genealogy, I guess, journey? Let me start with Del Jupiter.
Well, I guess I have gone about as far as I can go. All my research has really been done on my father's side. On my mother's side, I paid a researcher in Salt Lake City to do them, but they still couldn't find the actual slave owner. But I did find a lot of interesting information. So I don't know. I've done about everything I can do now.
Yeah.
I would love to take my father's side back to Africa. The people in New Orleans, my lineage goes back to New Orleans, and New Orleans got all their slaves. The French Company of the Indies were the one that brought the slaves over from Africa straight to New Orleans. They didn't stop in the Caribbean. So it's possible I did the Howard University. You can do your DNA sample through them, checking your maternal lineage, and we are Mandingo as far as they're concerned. They're from the Senegambia region, so that's about as for all I know.
Thank you. Allyson?
What I would really like to do is to successfully prove a patriot of color that I have in my lineage that I have found. And this brings up something that I would hope the DAR would do in the future. Currently, in order to be accepted in the DAR or to have a patriot proven, you need to provide documentation for birth, marriage, and death for each generation. I do not have that documentation for this person of color for every generation to link me. I would like the DAR in the future to accept a well-written genealogical proof, meaning you write something like a paper or an article that shows other types of proof, such as circumstantial records that might be used to demonstrate that a particular person is a patriot and that they are your direct ancestors. So that's my project.
Good.
Thank you.
Yes, well,
Del?
I don't have, they accepted my work, and I didn't have birth and marriage certificates for my Celtic ancestor who was black, who was a free man of color. But what it was that proved he was a child of the white man, the white father, was that he inherited his land. Because when Florida became a state, if you had settled on this land for so many years while it was while Spain was a Spanish territory, they accepted that fact because it has something to do with the land records that Congress approved, and it was 640 acres, and those 640 acres remain our family for maybe, I don't know how many years, but I know I have a document in 1919. Seems if somebody stole the land or did something to it, where I don't say they bought it. He said he was going to pay them for it and didn't. They took it to court. and we supposed to have lost it, but they still call that land Kelka Fields anyway. But it's the American Sentiment Company's on it now.
Okay.
But everybody knows it is Kelka Fields.
Right. Stephanie, do you have any untapped potential for your genealogy?
Yes, I would like to find the mother of James Dew's children. We have a name. I want to find concrete evidence that she is the mother. Being in Maryland, it was Blacks were not allowed to marry white people. So they did not acknowledge her name in any of their documents.
Nikki?
I have a couple of activities going on. After our last my podcast, someone from the National Society of Daughters of the Union contacted me, and because I had mentioned my ancestor Zachariah Harris, and I could not. There's some information I don't have what they needed for him, but I had another Black ancestor, Tom Smith, that I was able to use to join. So because of your podcast, I got back into looking for Civil War ancestors, and I found Black Civil War ancestors who fought for the Union, who were from Mississippi. And I want people to know that Mississippi had Union soldiers. They were not all Confederate soldiers in the Civil War. Mississippi had Union soldiers who were from Mississippi. And I'm not sure if I knew that. So I was happy to find that ancestor. And another thing that I'm doing besides those two, I'm also doing Daughters of Union Veterans. Also have pending applications. I haven't finished with that yet. And another thing, I'm going to become a certified genealogist. I won a scholarship from the Board of Certified Genealogists, BCG. I will be using my family history. Hopefully they'll allow it to become a certified researcher.
Congratulations.
I have a Civil War ancestor too. We always knew it when I was growing up that they fought in the Civil War. And one summer, my daughter and I went to DC, and I went to the archives and was searching, and asked the man at the desk. I told him I wanted to search Civil War. He gave me one drawer. I said, well, my grandfather isn't in here. And he asked, was he Black? I said, yes. So he brought me another drawer. And I told my daughter, I said, well, you look on the H, because we heard he spelled his name wrong, Higgins, and it's supposed to be Egan. So she had the H and I had the E drawer, and she found his name there, and they brought me a whole dresser drawer, a dress box full of records. And I learned then that when you find something, you should copy everything you see, photocopy everything you see. And I didn't do that. So years later, I was back in Maryland. They had moved the Civil War veterans records out from downtown DC out to Scuba, Maryland. I had to get special permission to go out there. And I found a whole lot of information that I needed to just, to fill out the links about who he was and where he was from. And when he joined, he said it was from Richmond, Virginia. And he kept the tale going even when he was after the war, when he would have to write them, say he's born in West Virginia. But I found a document where he had to get it notarized that he wasn't born in West Virginia. He was born in Cabot County, Maryland, named his brother. And I also found that Freedmen's Saving Bank records, and he and his brother were both in there. And my grandfather named his brother James to inherit his money in case something happened to him. And so I've been to Cabot County several times, to the church where they attended and everything. And I met the slave owner of that particular family also, and we still correspond.
And Del, I forgot to tell you when you were talking about your Portuguese records that were either in Portuguese or Spanish, I forgot to tell a little known fact about myself is that eu falo português, meaning I speak Portuguese. So
oh, you do?
Yes, see.
Well, what's the difference between the two?
You know what? They sound so very similar. So I grew up learning Spanish. I wasn't very proficient at Spanish. It's something I just had to take in school. But then when I was an adult, I traveled to Brazil, and I stayed for a couple of 6 weeks, and I became very fond of a gentleman there, and I wanted to talk to him. So I had to learn how to communicate with him. He didn't speak any English, and I just got an English Portuguese translation book. And what happened is my brain would get scrambled between Spanish and Portuguese. I would try to speak Portuguese, but it would come out Spanish. And because the words are so incredibly similar. And then the problem is now, I spoke with him for about 11 years, sometimes on the phone. So, it's even more difficult to understand without seeing the lips moving. So I got very proficient at it. And now I can't speak my Spanish. So it really totally ruined the Spanish, but I can speak Portuguese quite well now. So just
But
wanted to
I
give you
think this
that.
document was written in Spanish because
Okay.
the Spaniards were in Pensacola at the time. And I'm almost sure it was Spanish. But that reminds me, I went to a National Geological Society quarterly meeting once, and I saw that they were having a lecture, a workshop about Portuguese records. So I went in, and the man was asking the person in charge who was doing the lecturing, asked everybody where they were from or why they were there. And I told him I heard I had a Portuguese ancestry and I wanted to find out how to do that research. And he told me, well, I figured you were. I said, well, how did you know? How did you figure that out?
Okay, Adrienne, is there anything left for you to discover in your genealogy journey?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's two Y-DNA projects that I'm continuously looking for more males to test in, even though I kind of have my idea of the surnames they're connected to. And these are African American males that are connecting to white families. So I'm trying to just build up my African American set of testers in there so people can't say, well, how do we know it's not he's not an error or a fluke in this? Oh, well, there's 10 people from that family that are matching you. So it's kind of that. So I have that. And then I'd also like to figure out my ancestor, Frank Jones. That is when I lose sleep over at night. He was born in 1865. I want to know who his parents are. We have really high DNA matches, really high, that are most likely linked to him. So just determining how this is happening. So that's it. A lot of DNA projects. And also join the last lineage society I will probably join because I don't have too much time, enough time for them, is the one, and I can't remember the exact abbreviation, but the one for the Society for American Witches, Accused Witches. So through my Patriot ancestor, I have an accused witch ancestor who is actually the same person that is Sarah Jessica Parker's ancestor. So when she was on Who Do You Think You Are, and I was watching like, oh, this is awesome. Oh, that's so cool. I didn't realize at the time that they were featuring my ancestor as well. So
Wow.
Okay, so we have two more attendees that have snuck in a couple of questions here. And let's see what they are. One is, I am working with a Black adoptee who has done DNA via Ancestry and 23andMe, and it's on the DAR site. So I know that Adrienne is our DNA specialist, but I'm going to also ask Dell because they've directed it to Dell. Can Dell share more about the Howard DNA project? And then Adrienne, I'll let you chime in any more about, she's working with a Black adoptee who has done DNA via Ancestry and 23andMe, and it's on the DAR site. Can you share more about the Howard DNA project?
Well, it's done through Howard University. It was so long ago that I did it. I couldn't tell you much about it. Maybe you could Google and find out about it now. But theirs is the maternal DNA, the mtDNA, where you trace your maternal ancestry and not the paternal, not the Y-DNA, which that was interesting to me. But then you need to go 5 generations straight back and not have a male come in between. Now, and I did my mother's side, well, I can go back 5 generations of women, but on my father's side, I had to get a cousin to do it because my father intervened and she was a straight line female back 5 generations in my family.
Okay. Adrienne, what do you want to add?
Well, has the adopted individual's DNA, have they determined who their biological parents are? Because that would be the next step. Or do they already know that information? I guess I have more questions than I have answers because, yes, they've done DNA testing, but for DAR, I mean, you're still going to have to determine who those biological parents are and then build out their trees. Then it just becomes regular genealogy. So,
Okay.
so if an answer comes back in for the question, I'll
Robin,
upon
I have allowed you to be able to contribute to that by, if you unmute yourself, we will hear you. Robin, if you're there, who submitted this question, your mic is open. And
Thank
if
you.
go ahead, go for it. This is
Thanks.
the first time we're doing this on Daughter Dialogues Live. This is what happens when people stay to the end. You get nice, unexpected surprises. So, Robin, go for it. We can hear you.
Thank you. So the adoptee, we have been able to prove via documents and DNA who his mother is. No clue on the father, and mother says she does not know who the father is. But he had one match. The thing that threw me was when I added his DNA to the FTDNA for DAR, there was one match in there, but it was way back.
Right. A lot of them are way back, but but you don't know if that's through the mother or the father.
Not a clue.
Right. Again, if you said you had documents. So if you identified the mother and you have you built out her tree,
I have
do you
built
see
out,
Patriot?
No, I've only built it out. It goes to Dominica.
Oh.
And about 1900, and then I get stuck because apparently it's a very common name.
Okay. Well, I'm not too familiar with Dominica and the likelihood of Patriots being connected to that side. But the father side, do you see matches? Are like the DNA results indicating West Indian ancestry on both sides likely? Or, I mean, I guess the next step is just you have to wait and figure out who that biological father is and build out history to see if you can find a connection to a Patriot.
Thank you. We've gotten the matches that have replied have been fourth cousins and back. Some in England and some in Trinidad. So one in Cameroon. They're all over the place.
Yeah, it sounds like this person might have two West Indian parents if their highest matches are fourth cousin matches and the mother was from oh God, I want to say Dominican Republic. But,
right, it's Dominica. Yeah, the great grandmother is from Dominica.
Okay, so yeah, it sounds like they have recent West Indian or Caribbean ancestry on both sides.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Robin. Robin joins us quite often, so thank you for being a great supporter. And Bunny Bowen, I will also find you and have your mic open as well. She has a question that says, Allyson, have you tried using an analysis to prove the Patriot that you are working on? This is what is used when direct evidence has not been found. And Bunny, your mic is open. If you unmute, then you'll be able to also contribute if you want to say something more. But okay, Allyson?
I have not. I'm still doing the research, and I have done some writing, and I've been working on proper citations. What kind of analysis are you talking about?
She's still muted, but I've opened the line, so Bunny would need to click the unmute for herself on her side. So
I've
she's
done
muted.
An analysis, Bunny, in support of my application, but it was returned back to me. But I wrote it up. I was told it was not necessary, it was not needed, but I went through the pain of making one, of drafting or creating one, but if that helps.
So Bunny's open now. I can hear
Yeah.
her. Go ahead.
So, I mean, analysis there's actually a form called analysis that, like Nikki was just talking about, that is routinely used for situations that you're talking about where direct evidence doesn't exist. They are hard to prove. They don't always accept them, that's for sure. We did just get a lady in who had Rhode Island roots. The genealogists came back and wanted us to change a few things, which we did, and then they did accept it. So we never did find a vital record that linked a gentleman to his parents, and that would be going back to probably about the 1840s. But because we could link his sisters, they accepted that. So that might be something that you want to look up on. I think you can go to like the genealogy guidelines section and read up about analysis and how to do that.
All right, thank you. I will do that.
Okay, great. You
Thank
sound like
you,
a really intelligent lady, so I'll bet you can figure it out. No problem.
Thank you, Bunny. Okay, so that ends all of the questions that I have for everyone. And in the spirit of Portuguese, boa noite, that's good night. And I want to talk about next week. Okay, so you have to join us. Next week is the final Dialogue with the Daughters Live. The common thread next week will be free people of color more than victims of slavery. And this, we're going to be talking about Black pioneers and social resistance. The ladies that will be included are A'Lelia Bundles. If you recall, she is the great daughter of Madam C.J. Walker, of which a Netflix series is out about her called Self-Made, because Madam C.J. Walker was the very first self-made millionaire, female millionaire in the United States. And we have our great granddaughter joining us. Diamond Bush will be back. That is our youngest. That is our she's in her late 20s. She'll come back and talk about her ancestry. Charlotte Chatfield, we haven't had her on yet. And if you recall that in her family history, that she has a white great grandmother that had a child with a Black man in 1871, I believe.
We're related, but we don't know how.
Oh, isn't that interesting? And we have Shari Phillips. If you haven't seen, she hasn't been on with us yet either. And her family was entangled in a story that's intertwined with the assassination of President Lincoln. So you really want to find out. If you haven't heard that, of course, you are supposed to be listening to the podcast before you come in, because we're not going to repeat the story, but you will have a chance to ask Shari about that whole complicated story. That's very fascinating. And Nikki will return to join us. So again, the Daughter Dialogues podcast will return in February in commemoration of Black History Month, and begin with the interview of the very first known admitted Black daughter into the Daughters of the American Revolution, Karen Batchelor. So we will have her story the very first Thursday in February. We will kick that off on the podcast. And you can find the Daughter Dialogues podcast on daughterdialogues.com. Click on the tab Dialogues, or any podcast platform. Wherever you get your podcast, you will be able to find Daughter Dialogues. And always, everybody here is a newsletter subscriber, so thank you. And again, support us by following us on Facebook, Instagram.
How do you find these?
Yes.
How do you find these? What we're doing now?
Oh, that's a good question, Dell. See, Dell is on it. So she's like, now, wait a minute. What about what we did now? So the live events are recorded, and I will be posting the recording on YouTube. So Daughter Dialogues has a YouTube channel. You can get to it through either the events page on Daughter Dialogues. You can look for past events, and there will be a link to the YouTube channel, or you can go to YouTube directly and find Daughter Dialogues. And I will be emailing a link to the recording to, of course, all of the newsletter subscribers. So everyone will get a link to the recordings from tonight and from the prior weeks, and you will be able to listen to this recording of today's Daughter Dialogue. Daughters Live. You will definitely be on the list, Del. So other than that, thank you, everyone. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Daughter Dialogues. This has been a wonderful evening, and bye-bye. Till next week. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you, Risha.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.